Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. Now for today's video, we've got something a little different. We were having a look at the Nintendo Switch online apps that you have on the Switch the other day. You've got your NES, Super Nintendo, N64, etc. And we decided to pick one of our favourite games from each of those apps. We haven't included the Mega Drive just for this one, we've kept it Nintendo. So we've got 10 games here that are our favourites from, well, back in our childhood, basically.
Absolutely. Glen's been very kind. This wasn't my idea at all, it was his. And it's a good one. So we're going to tell you what our favourite games are. What are they? Well, let's find out.
So let's start with the NES then. Now this is a console I didn't own as a kid. It's the only of these 5 actually that I didn't own. So these are games that I kind of played around friends or cousins' houses, that sort of thing. And I'm going to ask you to start if that's okay, Mark. So your first pick then.
Yeah, we did own one. It wasn't mine. It was always my older brothers that had the consoles, which was really annoying. But mine has to be Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, classic.
Classic, absolute classic. I literally remember sitting down with the old squared off controller.
Yep.
Just hearing that like intro theme tune and then just beginning a run and being like, oh, this is so easy to pick up and play.
Yeah. This is it's like a quintessential platformer, isn't it?
Really
it's like
is.
Anyone that wants to know how to design a platformer, just play the first level of this game. It's perfectly created. You mentioned the music there. I mean, to this day, I took my kids to see the Mario movie the other week, and that first, World 1, Level 1, that music plays as soon as you enter the cinema. It is classic.
A really good game. And funnily enough, although we've had a million platformers since, if you go back to this, still the weighting on the movement and things like that is like perfection.
It is very much so. And it's quite interesting listening to interviews over the years with Shigeru Miyamoto and kind of his take on how it came to be and how they wanted to kind of drip feed players what they needed to do without telling them, because obviously these days, or those days I should say, a platformer was relatively new, things like having the first enemy and feeling compelled to jump on him because he comes at you at speed and what else are you going to do, having that first block with a question mark on it that you feel the need to hit and get a power up, it's quite clever. And the fact they designed the levels on graph paper and drew them all out.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And something that we both did, we were teachers many moons ago, and we worked together and we actually did a lesson on level design, and we used this level, World 1, Level 1, as an inspiration to show children how to map out a level and kind of the do's and don'ts of what a good level would look like.
That was a damn good lesson.
Yeah, it was. It was good. It was good fun. Yeah, great game.
Yeah, although Charles Martinet didn't do the voice of this one, he did Mario 64, he's just retired. Yeah.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, so his voice work is going to be not in any, I believe, in any future games. And he's becoming a Mario ambassador or a Nintendo ambassador.
Nice.
So I think it's just like their nice way of carrying him on.
It's
pretty cool.
He was in the movie as well, wasn't he? He had a little cameo, so that was cool. Yeah. Right, my pick for this one then. This was difficult actually. There was a really obvious one that I haven't picked, and reason being that I'm sure you'll see it in a different form later. But I've gone for one called Journey to Silius, which is
Never heard of it.
Well, it's a kind of a run and gun platformer that was from Sunsoft, and again I've mentioned them before. They did things like Blaster Master, the Batman game on the NES as well. Really some good games back in the day. And this was actually going to be a Terminator licensed game,
right,
on the first Terminator movie, and I think they lost the license or there was an issue with it, so they kind of just made their own thing, and you can definitely see the Terminator vibes in there,
Does he start out in like a bubble and spawn in?
Well, you play as what would have been Kyle Reese,
right?
But you get that feel. As soon as you hear the story, you're like, oh yeah, all right, I see it. You know what I mean?
This is the Pro Evo of like Terminator.
Of the Terminator, yeah. But it's a very good game. Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Like, really tough. And I just wanted to offer something a bit different because I'll be honest, mine would have been Mario 3. But as you've picked a Mario one, we'll try and add a bit of variety to the list. But if you haven't tried this one, and obviously you've got the app, it's worth a go. Like, be prepared to die a lot.
Yeah.
But it's just a fun take on that platforming genre in that, it's a bit more action based.
So is it just a straight run and gun?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you can crouch down on your belly to avoid shots, and there's things coming at you from all angles. More like something like Contra than a traditional platformer in that respect, but it's very well polished for its time. Good level design, and if you're up for a challenge, it's well worth playing. I really enjoy this one actually.
Then we skip forward a few years and we've got the Super Nintendo console, which again my older brother had, which was, I don't know how this happened, right? He had the Game Gear, he had the Super Nintendo, he had the Mega, he had them all.
Yeah.
I was just languishing in the background.
So I was the older brother, so I didn't have any of that.
So
nonsense.
You know what he lived with.
That's
play. Right. Well, I remember walking in one day and he'd got himself Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah.
And then when I finally got to pick up the controller when he was off doing something cool, I had a go, and I was like, oh my giddy aunt, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I tell you what it was for me, it was the animations.
Yeah.
Like some of the character animations in that game, they were like next level from what I remember for the time. Like it almost looked like a photo, you know, the way he moved and it's like, wow, this is incredible. But yeah, Donkey Kong Country, I know you like this one as well.
This would have been my pick.
Oh, really?
But I'm just happy to see it on the list, to be fair. But yeah, it used like pre-rendered animation.
Yes.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it looks a bit janky now, but back then it was unbelievable. I remember the advert when the game released, and just because obviously this came out around about the time-ish that the PlayStation was about to release or had released.
Right.
And obviously that was double the power of the Super Nintendo. So Nintendo kind of were in this quandary of what to do in the meantime.
Yeah.
And this game really did give them a shot in the arm. You know, it's a great platformer, really good.
It holds up today, doesn't it? I mean, even with the more modern ones that we've had on Switch, you can still play this and be like, oh wow. And if you have actually played the more recent one but not played this, I'd say it's worth going back.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I play this game at least once a year.
Do you?
I do, like all the way through.
That's amazing.
Always have done since it released. I love this game. And I mean, you have Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, I think, on here too, on the app. 2 is generally seen as the best. It kind of took what the first one did and refined it. I prefer 1, mainly because it's got Donkey Kong in it. That's you know, the kind of the character I want to play as. And also, the second one started to lean quite heavily towards some of the animal friends. You had levels that were very specific to them, which was fine, but I preferred the simplicity of the first one.
Yeah, now you correct me, well you might know. I don't know if I'm misremembering. I seem to remember playing as Diddy Kong.
Yeah, so the first game had Donkey and Diddy as your 2, and the second game had Diddy and Dixie Kong as your 2. And then the third game had Dixie Kong and Kiddy Kong, I think his name was. Big like baby. Big heavy baby. And the third game was a bit different in that whilst it was still a platformer, you had like a map that you needed to open parts of by acquiring items that would unlock a new area.
Yes.
So it changed things up a bit. All great games, but this first one is magic. Yeah, it's very good. Very good. Now, my pick, as I said, would have been Donkey Kong Country. Now, the Super Nintendo is my favourite console of all time.
Really?
Yeah. Like, when I looked on this app, it just reminded me why. Yeah. So many good, just on this app, so many good games. But I think I'm going to go for Super Metroid. I think Super Metroid is the one I'm going to pick.
Okay.
Could change on any other day, you know. But I remember playing this as a kid, and I remember buying it. I've told this story before, but I will tell it again, because I was in Woolworths, and I'd saved my pocket money up.
Woolworths.
Yeah. And I had £50 saved up. Like 5 weeks worth of paper round money or whatever, you know. And I was going to buy Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo. Yeah. And at the last minute, I see this huge box with a big manual included. It had like a space person and a big dragon fighting each other on the front. Super Metroid, never heard of it. Hadn't played Metroid on the NES at this point. For £20, 19.99. So I bought that, and I bought Worms on the Game Boy, which was about £15. So I went home with change and 2 games, and it was the best decision ever, because Batman Forever is terrible, but this is just incredible. Do you know what I mean? I mean, when people talk about Metroidvanias now, this is the formula that they all followed. Do you know what I mean? I know it's been refined over the years, and you have things like Hollow Knight that have changed it up slightly, but this is basically what every other game follows now. You know, that formula of powering up, opening new areas because of it, but the atmosphere of this game is just unbelievable. You know, this was the most cinematic game I'd ever played at that point.
I think as well, these are some of the ones that have held up the best. You know, when you go back to visit some of your classics, you can be like, oh, okay, it feels a bit dated. But something like this, because so many games now use these mechanics, and in not too dissimilar a way,
absolutely,
you can go back to this and be like, oh my word, this is amazing.
For sure. I don't think many games have improved on this formula. They may have made it flashier, they may have added their own spin, which is great, but I don't think many have improved on it. Even Metroid Dread, which came out a year or so ago, whenever it was, hasn't added a huge amount to the basic formula. Do you know what I mean? And I think this, you're right, this game has held up so well. It's not one that you I find the first Metroid a bit of a chore to get through, but I could see the seeds of what they were trying to achieve, and I think they achieved that with Super, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. All right, then we've got the N64, and you know what I'm going to say, Glenn?
Yeah, I do.
Superman 64.
Good game. Cracking game.
No, GoldenEye 64. Man, it's funny, isn't it? Because like the way you talk about Metroid and to be honest, the way we talk about all of these games is they're tied to a memory as much as they're a memory and a time and an experience. And this one was my first console. So all the others, you know, it was my older brother, but this was Christmas, and they bought me the N64. And there's a photo of me actually ripping it open, and like the big eyes, just like, nice. And I had the N64 game, and I know it wasn't. I don't think it was released at Christmas. I think it's just they kind of saved up because we were a bit poor at the time.
Yeah.
So it was such a big deal. And I had a little 14-inch CRT TV, and I sat on my carpet in my room on a little rug, and I played all day long.
Yeah.
All day long. And then challengers would come in, I'd hand them a controller, absolutely destroy them in multiplayer. player and then just send them away.
With the tail between their legs.
See you later, it's time to do the 00 missions. Have you actually played GoldenEye?
Yeah. I never. Well, I did own it. Sorry, but at the time I didn't own it. My friend did. I had a friend with an N64, and we kind of tried to buy different games as best as we could. Obviously, you got bought presents sometimes, and we saw each other every day, and we just my games and his games became our games almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he had GoldenEye, but yeah, I played huge amounts of it back in the day. Not just multiplayer, but as you say, the missions themselves. Yeah, what a game! Like what a game! I think it was probably the first. I'd played things like Doom at that point, Wolfenstein.
Yeah,
I think this was the first-person shooter that really grabbed me in terms of that genre. You know?
Do you know, we talked about it in another video. I can't remember when it was, but I actually miss the days of less hand-holding. You know, a lot of these games. I remember that first mission. It's like, this is what you need to do. Go.
Yeah.
And you could mess it up. There were certain things you could destroy if you were going for the harder difficulty levels, and you'd have to restart the whole thing.
Yeah.
I miss some of those days. You know.
Yeah, I do. As you say, you had to go into the pause menu to see the exact objectives and the little mini, side objectives and stuff. But yeah, no, it was such a good game. And I remember I used to buy like Nintendo magazine. America had Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
Ours was called Official Nintendo Magazine over here. And I remember this getting reviewed, and I remember them doing like a whole spread on each of the characters. So obviously you had, was it Pierce Brosnan, Robbie Coltrane, all of the actors that were in it, and seeing their like polygonal versions. And as basic as it looked, it was just next level, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is incredible. And it had these cheat codes, didn't it, that you could unlock by finishing a level within a specific amount of time.
Yeah, that's
so you had to like speedrun them.
Yeah.
So it almost, was one of the first games to introduce speedrunning.
Yeah.
And you had to be spot on to get those times.
Yeah.
They were nails.
Yeah, and it had things like big head mode and stuff, didn't it, that you unlocked and things like that.
It's a perfect balance between single and multiplayer.
It was. And it's funny how you would find things to do in games like that back then. Even if you'd finished it, you'd go back and play it and just muck about on a level, or the things that you'd invent almost, like a game within a game, because you didn't have as many games, and you wanted to get your money's worth.
I can literally hear it in my head, that do. I can hear it.
It was very,
the gate.
Yeah, very clever how they made you feel like James Bond.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know if I'm right in saying this. I can't really remember, but I know GoldenEye, the film, these days is seen as a big event because you had the end of Timothy Dalton's run, I think in 1990, then there was a 5-year gap, and obviously Pierce Brosnan took over. But I don't think it was until the game came out that film started to get the proper accolades that it has these days, you know?
What was the lady called in that film?
You had Natalia, who was the lady that's also in X-Men.
But the love interest, she was...
Oh, no, Natalia was the love interest, and Xenia was the lady from X-Men, whose name escapes me now.
Good film. No, but I think I did the same. I played the game and then went back and tried to compare and contrast them. I do think GoldenEye was very popular at the time, because I remember going to see it a couple of times. I don't know if I was old enough, actually, but yeah, I do remember going to see it. But yeah, I think they kind of fed each other, right? It kind of went backwards and forwards.
Quite possibly, you could be right. My pick then for N64, this was tough as well. This and the Super Nintendo were the two hardest. And I do want to give a shout out to Lilac Wars, or Star Fox 64 as it was known elsewhere, but we got the Duff title, which was, I probably played that one the most, because you had the gold missions, the medals you could earn, there was multiplayer in that, you got the Rumble Pack with it.
Yeah.
I played stupid amounts of that game as a kid, but I am going to pick Ocarina of Time.
Ah, very good.
So yeah, that's the one I think I'm going to pick. But Ocarina of Time, so Legend of Zelda, obviously, Ocarina of Time, I think that was almost, to us back then, what Breath of the Wild was.
Yeah.
To Zelda recently. It took it in a whole new way, it literally into a new dimension. You had A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, which is a great game. Didn't get mentioned just now, could well have done. But this it literally just took it to a new level,
Yeah, do you know what? I remember being stuck in that first area for about an hour and a half because I couldn't find out that little bit you have to crawl through to go and get the sword or whatever it is. That was a real ball ache.
I remember playing that bit in Toys R Us. They had one set up and you could play whatever game they had in, and you went and spoke to the Deku Tree or something, didn't you, as young Link, and then obviously went off and started your adventure. But just again, like the fact that you started as a child and you become adult Link, and the time travel element that it introduced, picking the Master Sword out of the stone, and all those iconic moments that had been done in 16-bit or 8-bit, but really here shone. And that feeling of just how big your adventure was for that time, it was quite mind-blowing,
Yeah. They just don't do stuff like that anymore.
No, they don't.
Like it used to have a real tactile thing to it. The physical copies, the playing in the shop, the making sure your mates had the other games so that you all had a complete set.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that, does it?
No, it doesn't. Gaming has changed for in good ways sometimes, but there's a bit that's been missed. A bit of the magic has faded, I'm afraid, over the years. But no, Ocarina of Time is special. Yeah, it's a great game. Still worth playing today. I mean, this N64 version is a little clunky now. They remade it for the 3DS. That updated a lot of the inventory management. Yeah. So obviously, as far as I know, that's not in this version, but still worth playing.
Yeah. Do you know what? I don't think I've actually finished Ocarina of Time.
Have you not?
No.
Well worth playing if you
I think I'm like a good chunk in. There was the bit where the boulders were rolling down something or other. Like there's a boulder area.
Right.
Like giants or something.
Yeah. I can't remember what they're called.
You know
I know
what
you mean though.
It was after that annoying village with the little chickens, and then I think probably my older brother took it. Let's be honest. I'm gonna blame him.
I know the water tower is the one that a lot of people. The infamous water tower. You have to keep raising the levels and lowering the levels of the water, and you have to put the heavy boots on to sink. But again, back then you did it, didn't you? You just did it. Right, so we move on to the Game Boy now, which is one of the more recent apps that have been added.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the Game Boy Color game that I think you might have heard of, Glen. It's Link's Awakening.
Good choice.
I think, we recently reviewed, didn't we, one of the newer releases on this app, and one of the newer those two Game Boy games that were created by Capcom.
Yes, Oracle of Ages and Seasons.
And obviously they took a lot of inspiration and / assets from this game.
They did indeed. Yeah, again, this would have been my pick. But again, just to have it on here is good because this is a fantastic game. Yeah. So by this point, A Link to the Past was out. This was the full Zelda game chronologically. And it took what that game did and borrowed a lot of it, but it did it with such a quirky nature. It really did change the formula in terms of that serious tone that the first Super Nintendo game had taken on, and just added this whimsy to it. You're on this island, you get shipwrecked, you wake up on this island, you're told you must wake the windfish to get home. But the characters you meet are just so funny,
It's memorable, isn't it? Everything about it's memorable. And I remember, do you know what I remember more than anything else, weirdly enough? Do you remember we used to get a game and like it could be on Christmas or whatever, but you weren't allowed to play it yet. Yeah. So you'd get the manual. Yeah. And you just sit, and you might even be on the toilet just reading every asset of that manual. Yeah,
I do remember that. Or you bought a game in the shop and you're in the car on the way home or whatever. You just wanted to do something. It had a gold box,
didn't it?
It did, yeah, it did.
I can remember the smell of it.
That's no, I got this one for Christmas. I remember one year. I got this, and I think, again, it's been a few years now, but I think I got Turtles 2 with it. Yeah. So, obviously being a big Turtles fan, and that was the one I played first. And I have fond memories of that game, but then putting this in, and it's just adventure you wouldn't have thought was possible on a handheld, Again, this holds up very well.
I was going to say.
It really does, Again, it's a bit clunky in terms of inventory management, very much like the previous Zelda game we spoke about. And it has had a remake, of course, which does fix those issues. But this is still more than playable.
An incredibly good game, brilliant storyline beneath it as well, and you can just pick it up and play. If you, like Glenn said, go back and give it a go if you haven't tried it before, because it's a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, my pick then for the Game Boy is Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. Now this was the first, I got this and Super Mario Land, the first one, with my Game Boy, as well as obviously Tetris. One Christmas, and this is a great game. Back as a kid, I preferred the first one, and I think I still do prefer the first one. Yeah. That's not on this app for some reason. Yeah.
Weird.
Which is weird, yeah. But this game really did do a lot to kind of differentiate Mario away from the console versions at the time, and just show how good a portable Mario game could be and could look, because the graphics are a step up. It's not even close to the first game,
right?
In terms of the step up in graphics, in quality of graphics, and also the way it plays. You have Mario Land to explore, and you have your different areas, of course, and you have a few different power ups. I think there are bunny ears in this one that allow you to float and little things like that. But it's just a very well-designed game that maybe doesn't always get the love it deserves.
Yeah, I think this one completely passed me by at the time. I do remember seeing the box. I can kind of picture the box weirdly.
Yeah.
More than any aspect of the game.
Yeah, the box was classic. It had Mario in the middle with his bunny ears. Yeah. Almost had like a circular pattern to it with all the enemies kind of forming a circle around him. Yeah. But of course it also introduced Wario, who was the final boss. And again, there was a classic advert. If I can find a decent enough quality version of it, I'll just flash a little bit off the screen of it now. But it had Wario almost hypnotising you, on the advert with like a spiral behind him, and
remember. Saturday morning, man.
Yeah, it was great. But this is worth playing. It's quite easy. Apart from the last, fighting Wario is pretty tough. But it's worth your time. It's definitely worth your time. And it is just so different to the other Mario games that it's just worth it for that, you know?
Yeah, I know it's taken Nintendo a while to kind of drip feed their games onto the store. But sometimes I think less is more. You know, there are good games on here. People can just gradually work their way through.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this when we were talking about the differences between now and then as well. And I do think that's a big problem. Like, you know, we talk about the backlog all the time. When we were kids, like, you just had one game.
I know, yeah.
And there was something in that.
Yeah.
You maxed that game out. You knew every aspect of it. And even if it wasn't that good a game, because it was what you had, you played it, like, you made the most of it, right?
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, obviously with the Nintendo Switch Online, because it's a paid service, there is an aspect of, well, we're paying for it.
Yeah.
There should be more on there, which I understand.
Yeah.
I do understand that. Don't get me wrong. But I must say, you know, as an adult who can wait, you know, who hasn't got other stuff to play, there is something nice about the drip feed because it does make you feel like a kid again, waiting for your favourite game to drop. Right. You know, but yeah, with it being a paid service, it makes it that bit harder to, you know. Right, let's move on to the final one, which is the Game Boy Advance. Now, Mark didn't have a GBA.
Didn't have one.
And hasn't played.
I bought one later in life, but they didn't have any games.
Right, yeah.
It's weird.
So I'm going to pick two for this one, and we'll just, you know, have a general chat about it. And the first one I'm going to pick is the one I alluded to right at the start, which was the Game Boy Advance version of Super Mario Bros. 3. So I can't remember exactly what this is. I think it's called Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. But Super Mario Bros. 3 is a game, the original. Again, talk about kind of leveling up from that first Super Mario Brothers. Mario Brothers 2, which changed the formula. You had you throwing vegetables and whatnot, and was a different game entirely to begin with, and was kind of rebranded as a Mario game. But then when this one came out, it really was Nintendo at the top of their game. It was again just the peak of the industry, showing what could be done, you know?
Yeah. Random question. Did the Advance let you play your older games?
You could play Game Boy games on it, yes.
Yeah,
you could plug them in.
You?
Yeah.
Did it enhance them in any way?
Not that I can remember. If you had the Game Boy Advance SP, which was like the newer model, had a backlit screen.
Nice.
Well, it might have been frontlit actually, I can't remember. But it had a lighted screen so you could see those games.
Yeah.
You know, actually see them, literally you could see them. But no, I didn't add anything to them.
Okay. Yeah. No, this was a great one. What was your other pick for the Advance?
So the other one then, I didn't want to pick two from one franchise, but I ended up having to because I had to pick Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo, but it's Metroid Fusion. Now this is Nintendo at their best, taking a property that had kind of stalled a little bit perhaps, or they were a bit of a quandary of what to do with it, and just showing how good a game they could make, you know. And this one, the difference with this one was that in terms of previous Metroid games, I mean, is that you had something chasing you. So you had the SAX, which was basically a clone or a copy of Samus that had been enhanced by this bacteria. I can't quite remember the story, but the point was that at certain points you were followed and had to hide.
Right, okay.
And obviously Metroid Dread did something similar.
Yeah.
So you can see the influence from their previous games. But this one kind of streamlined what Metroid had been at that point, in terms of 2D Metroid I'm talking about, of course. And it did make it a bit simpler to find where to go next. It was very much cutscene, you know, like a pixelated cutscene of talking to your computer and being told, right, you must go here now, and then the map zooming in and pinpointing it. Not like Super Metroid, say, which was very much still a quick, you know, might be nice if you go this way and then get on. So it did introduce a tiny element of hand-holding, if you want to call it that, but it's still such a good game. It's so well designed, you know.
Another one that holds up.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, this is one to play for sure.
How long, do you know how long this is?
To finish?
Yeah.
8 hours.
Oh, okay.
I would say, guess. Yeah, not very long. You also had, this is not another one that's not on there yet. I hope they do add it. But you had Zero Mission, which was another GBA Metroid game, which was a remake of the first game on the NES, which is, as I said, I played years after the fact and struggled with. I must say that was one I didn't think held up very well, but that remake is great. Nice. So hopefully that's one they'll add. All
right, brilliant. Well, let us know in the comments what your games are for the different platforms on the Nintendo Online. I'm sure there's got to be a few quirky little hidden gems in there, maybe that neither of us have played.
Yeah, there are loads on there. Please do, feel free to mention any that, as Mark said, maybe a bit of a hidden gem, because there are some great games on there. Please do let us know if you enjoyed this video. Maybe it's something we can revisit in the future. I certainly enjoyed having a chat about it. It was nice. If you're looking for eShop credits to pick, well, you can't pick these up. You can get your Nintendo Switch Online, maybe.
Yeah, you can get a discount.
Get a discount on that. Use our website, switchup.gg. You'll get yourself some cash back in points, and you can get a straight discount if you use the code SwitchUp. There's also a link down there to Play Asia. Again, not useful for this, but if you want to pick any physical games up, there's a link down there. You get yourself 5% off your order from there too. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.